You are listening to We Saw the Devil, an investigative and conversational true crime podcast that deep dives into fascinating criminal cases that are solved, unsolved, or ongoing. From America's Lori Vallow to Germany's Armin Meiwes, we examine and discuss the world's most shocking cases. If you're enjoying the show, don't forget to follow us online. Check us out at WeSawTheDevil.com and We Saw the Devil on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget, you can become part of the show by backing us on Patreon. Hello everyone, you are listening to We Saw the Devil. This is Robin, and I am here with a quick episode on a case that has actually thoroughly disturbed me this week. I was originally going to do a kind of a week in review episode because so much stuff has happened over the last week. I can't honestly in my life think of another time period, and I followed true crime extensively throughout my entire life, literally since I was in middle school, where so many women have been found dead. Went missing, suspicious or not, and then they were found dead. Their remains were found. And it just seems like the last 2 weeks, it's been constantly in the news. Missing mothers, teenagers, young girls. It's just been absolutely awful reading the news lately, compounded by obviously what's going on in Ukraine right now. And it's a dark time period at the moment. This one particular case just tremendously disturbed me. It's not convoluted or complex, say like the Lori Vallow case or Suzanne Morphew or anything like that. This one is likely pretty cut and dry. But I think it's just the simple nature of what happened that is actually so terrifying. And it's the case of Naomi Irion, the 18-year-old girl in Nevada. So I would like to cover this case for those of you who are not familiar. Just really quick, let's just get our housekeeping out of the way. You can find us at WeSawTheDevil.com. From there, you can find us across all social media as well as our Patreon. I had a couple show topics planned for this week and next week, like a primer, say, for example, of what is actually going on in Ukraine. Whereas it's not your typical true crime episode, it's something that is a crime. There are war crimes going on, and I can't think of anything that's a truer crime than invading someone's country and slaughtering and killing innocent people. Obviously, the Lori Vallow and Suzanne Morphew case updates, which I am still getting up to snuff on. It's been a while since I have covered them. But this case in particular, for some reason, really pulled at my heartstrings this week, so I wanted to cover it. For 2 heart-wrenching weeks last month, the Irion family clung on to the hope that their beloved daughter and sister, 18-year-old Naomi Irion, was still alive. Naomi was one of 7 siblings and the daughter of Herve and Deanna Irion. Herve is a U.S. State Department employee who is assigned to Foreign Service. His work has taken the family all across the world, from Germany, Asia, and most recently, Pretoria, South Africa. Diana, his wife, is a teacher. They had 7 children, and that includes 3 brothers that they recently adopted from Ukraine just a couple years ago. Naomi spent the last couple of years of high school in South Africa and had just recently graduated last year. Her brother Casey is a Navy veteran who lives in Fernley, Nevada and works at Apple as an engineer. Now, Naomi and Casey were very close as children, and it only made sense with Naomi's infatuation of the United States and American culture for her to move to the U.S. and live with Casey after she graduated high school. So she did. And Naomi became very close with Casey's fiance, and the 3 of them lived together while working and holding different schedules. Naomi got a job at Panasonic at a factory in Reno, Nevada, and the factory manufactures batteries. And Naomi had the same routine every single morning. She would wake up, stop at a local gas station for snacks, and then drive to the Fernley Walmart, where she would then take a shuttle bus to the factory. The morning of March 12th began basically like any other. Naomi got up, she got dressed for work, and then set off for that Fernley Walmart, stopping at a local gas station along the way to buy that day's snacks. CCTV footage would go on to show her pulling her blue 1992 Mercury Sable into the Walmart parking lot a little after 5 a.m. She sat in her car and she scrolled Facebook and social media and then sent a final Snapchat at 5:23 a.m. After that point, after that final Snapchat, all activity ceased. Casey, Naomi's brother, worked an opposite shift from her. He didn't think anything was strange when later that day, he didn't see her. Because the three of them living there had different schedules, different jobs, it was not uncommon for them to go a day or two, maybe without speaking or seeing one another. However, he became alarmed when he didn't see her the following evening, which is a Sunday. So he reached out to friends and family, and no one had heard from his sister either. Casey contacted Naomi's father, who had access to her financial accounts, and he confirmed that there had in fact been no activity since that Saturday, the day before. So Casey decided to call jails and hospitals across the area, across a couple counties, but he didn't get anywhere. No one had heard of her. His fiancée suggested that they should go to Walmart to see if their security team had anything on video. And this would actually be the game changer. Casey Valley and his fiancée went into that Fernley Walmart, met with the security team, and asked if they could see the security footage, see if they could find anything, see anything in that CCTV footage. And what he saw left him with a pit of dread in his stomach. In the footage, they went to the time roughly when Naomi was there. It captured her 1992 Mercury Sable pulling into the parking lot. In the footage, you see a man in a gray hoodie and jeans approach the Walmart parking lot from the direction of the local homeless camp. He kind of loiters, lurks around, and then oddly paces. He paces up and down an aisle, and then he approaches Naomi's car. And in Casey's own words, quote, "This person did say or do something to Naomi to make her move over from the driver's side to the passenger side. It was then that I reported it as a kidnapping. To me, it looked clear. To me, it looked like a clear abduction." Whoever this hooded man was, an interaction took place, and he got into the driver's seat and drove away. That was it. That's how simple it was. In another interview I read with Casey, he describes being a child of a diplomat, how you live in this community that is extremely naive, extremely sheltered, and that, in his opinion, Naomi did not have, I believe he described it as the tools in her toolbox, the skills in her toolbox to be able to really essentially operate in kind of like the public outside world, because she had grown up, fairly privileged as the child of a diplomat. After seeing the footage at Walmart, Casey called Panasonic, Naomi's employer, and his fear was confirmed. Naomi had not shown up to work in 2 days. So he immediately called police and reported a kidnapping. Now, the Irion family would not have to wait long before tragedy struck again, because Naomi's car was found just 3 days later near a paint manufacturing facility in an industrial park less than 1 mile from that Walmart and Interstate 80. And law enforcement did release a statement saying that it did show signs of foul play. Directly after that, a GoFundMe was set up so that Naomi's family could come to the U.S. from South Africa to be present for the initial investigation. And that GoFundMe raised more than $35,000 in just a couple days, and the Irion family flew to the U.S., where they have done, I'm sure that if you've been following this case, you've seen her family on TV. They've done a series of press conferences with police, making a public plea for information on Naomi's disappearance, and then also for her safe return. They made repeated references also to social media and admitted that they knew more than what was being released to the public. Hundreds of volunteers searched vast spans of the desert surrounding Reno and Fernley for almost 2 solid weeks with no leads. And then out of nowhere, it seemed, 41-year-old Troy Driver, a project superintendent at Leadcore, a construction company, was arrested on March 25th for suspicion of kidnapping, just 1 day short of 2 weeks after Naomi was seen being abducted on cameras. And it's still unclear as to how police and investigators were able to make the connection here. We don't know. But the arrest affidavit is pretty clear on what they think did happen. Troy Driver's, his pickup truck was impounded, and they also apparently have evidence of him destroying Naomi's cell phone. Now, at the time of his arrest, Troy Driver was considered a suspect in a missing persons case. They had not yet found Naomi's body. Then, acting on a tip, investigators announced on March 31st, just a week ago, that they had located her body. She was found after investigators were called to a remote part of Churchill County, roughly 60 miles away from that Fernley Walmart. And then 2 days ago, on April 5th, Troy Driver's charges were upgraded. He now has 5 charges against him in this case: first-degree murder with the use of a deadly weapon, kidnapping in the first degree, robbery, burglary of a motor vehicle, and destroying evidence. The complaint says that Troy Driver kidnapped Naomi Irion from the Walmart parking lot, and sometime between March 12th and March 25th, shot her in or near a rural portion of northern Churchill County, where he took her, quote, for the purpose of committing sexual assault and or purpose of killing her. Apparently, he shot her both in the head and in the chest, and then buried her in a very shallow grave. Troy Driver apparently had his truck tires changed as well in order to conceal evidence. I'm assuming the grave site, something like that, but he did change his tires in order to actually conceal evidence. And then again, he actually destroyed her cell phone. Now, he is currently being held on $750,000 bail in Yerington on that previous kidnapping charge. But he's no stranger to law enforcement or prison. He is a convicted felon. He previously served 12 years at a California state prison for his role in the murder of a meth dealer. He was convicted in 1997 of accessory to murder after the fact in relation to the killing of Paul Stephen Rodriguez. Rodriguez was 19 years old and he was a meth dealer. His girlfriend, who was 17 at the time as well, actually shot him in the head and killed him. And then she ended up calling Troy Driver and a couple others and a couple other boys who came and helped dismember and dispose of his body, set his car on fire, and then pushed the car into the woods. So Troy Driver spent 12 out of 15 years on an original sentence in prison. And then when he got out, he went on to receive some other charges and convictions for like second-degree robbery, domestic violence, burglary, assault, things like that. So he was an all-around just upstanding citizen, clearly. You know, there's something about this case in particular and the way that it happened. A couple of weeks ago, I found a series on TikTok about women name and, tell a story where you were in danger. And it's filled with stories from women attempted kidnapping. Men tried to get into their car, a lot of them at Walmart or the grocery store, things like that. And to me, those are actually the most terrifying. When you're out on your day-to-day business, putting groceries in your trunk, something as simple as that, or waiting in your car, a lot of women are caught off guard. We have the home invasions, you have spree killings, things like that. But going about your day-to-day life outside of your home and being completely caught off guard like that is just, for some reason, that's what terrifies me. And once you've been violated in that way, it's really, really hard to trust again. Like, a lot of people think I'm paranoid with my home security, like I have home security cameras and so forth. Once you've encountered something like this, it doesn't leave you. I have parrots. And when I was living in Portland, I lived in a house, and the bird room that I called it was where, all three of them were, their cages and whatnot. I had 2 cockatoos and an Alexandrian. That room faced the street. It faced our neighborhood street with the sidewalk and everything. Birds sleep at night. So I would put them to bed, and it would be pretty much silence in the dark until morning when the sun starts coming up. And then it's like that Lizzo meme of, my house gets really loud starting at about 5 a.m. every morning. Well, I put them to bed. I was actually working on the podcast, and all of a sudden the birds started going apeshit. This was like 2:30 in the morning. And I was like, what the fuck? So I quietly walked down the hallway. I opened the door to the bird room. I turned on the light. My eyes took a split second to adjust, and I saw a man standing in the window. I saw his hand move away from the window, and I saw him slowly back away. I didn't get to see his face. I just saw like a Carhartt jacket, and he had a hood pulled up, and he was actively trying to break into my home. He was trying to jimmy and open the window of my house, and I walked in the middle of the night and caught him doing it. Called police, waited until the sun came up, and then I went out and looked as well. If you're friends with me on Facebook, you saw me. You probably remember the post. I was freaking out. I posted the pictures because he left, when he was standing up against the window, he left footprints in the mulch. The mulch had just been done by my landscaping company, and he disturbed the mulch and was trying to jimmy open the window. The window had some damage on it. Since that moment, I have trust issues. I have major, major, major trust issues with points of entry in my home, windows, doors, things like that. So I have a very robust security system. That's controllable, right? We can control some of our settings, like home settings, things like that. But what about the unpredictable? Things like, what did Troy Driver say to Naomi Irion to get her to open the door? Was her door unlocked? Did he have a gun? Did he threaten her with a gun? There are so many different potential variables in this, and it always makes me think, what would I do in that situation? How would I react? And I don't think any of us know until the moment hits. When I went into the bird room in my house in Portland and I saw a man trying to come in through the window, you would think that I would scream or, react differently. Instead, I completely froze. I just stood there staring and couldn't move. I was literally frozen for a second. I couldn't move because my brain was having problems processing that information at the moment. I then checked all the windows, the doors as I called police, but I completely froze in that moment. I obviously woke Jackie up in the middle of the night and had her take a look. Like, it was a scary ordeal. But she and I would compare notes and whatnot. And I asked her, have you seen anything really suspicious? And she said, well, earlier that night we had grilled and my grill was kind of in our front driveway. And she said that she was standing there watching the food and I went inside for a minute and a man had been walking down the street. Looks like he was just, in a neighborhood going for a walk and he didn't look right. And he stared at her as he walked by. And he said something to the effect of, nice weather we're having, isn't it? But she said that she just got this like really creepy vibe from him as he walked by. And I didn't tell her what he looked like or what he was wearing. And I said, what was he wearing? And she said, it was really weird. It's too warm. And he was wearing like a big Carhartt coat. So that was the guy. Now, whether he was casing out homes, saw Jackie and thought that maybe she was, single and living there by herself, whatever. Either way, the outcome was not going to be positive. And in speaking with other people about this case, because I've been reading up and following this case for the last couple of weeks, one of the main things that someone always says is, well, what did he say or do to get her to open that door? And would I open the door if someone brandished a gun in my face or in my window? And I think that sitting here thinking about that scenario and not actually knowing how I would respond to it is actually what terrifies me the most. But this is a horrible tragedy of, by all accounts, a sweet, beautiful, intelligent woman who unfortunately came across a complete monster in a parking lot in Fernley, Nevada. I believe the next court date is going to be May 2nd. It was scheduled to be later this month, and then the judge moved it. The official complaint that was just filed is 4 pages long. That is all over the internet. You are welcome to find that and read it, but we are waiting on additional details from the autopsy, as well as details on how police connected the dots between Troy Driver and Naomi Irion in the first place. But that's it for today, guys. Do any of you have any stories of close calls, near misses, anything like that? This case immediately made me think of that TikTok video where women shared all of their stories. And there were so many involving parking lots and Walmart's, grocery stores and things like that where, full on attempted abduction. And it's terrifying. So do any of you have any stories like that, experiences? Please share them. You can email at info@wesawthedevil.com or shoot us a message on any of our social media accounts. Would love to hear them. Until next crime.